Native Women's Association in Canada is a voice for many within the Indigenous community. They are doing a lot of good work. Lorraine Whitman is amazing, and it was an absolute pleasure to sit down with her to find out more about the organization and the Indigenous community.
Deluisi Lorraine Whitman, grandmother white sea turtle, and president of Native Women Association of Canada. I come to you from Mi'kma'ki, unceded on traditional surrendered territory of the Mi'kmaq people.
What is the NWAC, the Native Women Association of Canada?
NWAC is the National Women Association of Canada. You know, commonly known as NWAC. People usually use the acronyms NWAC. It's an organization that represents the Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse. And when I say Indigenous, we represent the First Nation, the Métis, and the Inuit women, girls, and gender diverse community. We're a political voice of the Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people across Canada. We've been in existence since 1974. And it's been well known for the work that we do, for the well-being of the people that we represent, and equality of the Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse through advocacy, through education, through research and policy. We've been founded on a collective goal to enhance, promote, and foster the social, economic, cultural, and political well-being of Indigenous women within their respective communities and Canadian societies. For over 47 years, NWAC has been applying an intersectional, trauma-informed, culturally safe, gendered lens to support the needs of Indigenous women, girls, and gender diverse people. NWAC has established strong and lasting governance structures, decision making, as well as the processes, the financial policies and procedures and networks to help achieve the overall work that we do at NWAC. And this is through the social, economic, the cultural, and the political voice that we best work for our people.
How did you find out about NWAC, and why did you want to, join it and become, a voice for many of these, Indigenous women's?
As a young girl, I had been a youth in our community, and that's been well over 45 years ago. I always believed in speaking up and speaking for the truths and equality, because there was a lot of racism, discrimination when I was younger, but it still is there. Sometimes I wonder if it's even more because we have the technology, the phones, the internet, tweets, and, how we Facebook and how we communicate. But I've always believed in the rights. I've been brought up from a family of 14 children. I have 7 brothers, 6 sisters, myself being the one of the 7 daughters. My grandfather was chief of Bear River First Nation. My father was chief of Gluskap First Nation. And my sister was chief, and presently my younger brother is chief. So we've always been in the political voice, advocating, defending rights for our people, and being brought under the matrilineal line of my mother. Her voice was very strong. Even though she was a very quiet woman, whenever she spoke, you heard what she had to say. She had been one that was brought up, there was residential school. There was a 60 scoop that my siblings were taken to. So we've lived in many of these areas where, it hasn't been a good life, but you make it the best that you can, and you never give up. So we've always been taught never to give up. And I always went forward, working with the women, the girls, I myself had been in the political position as an elected councillor for 17 years. I worked in the education. My education is in the field as rehabilitation practitioner, which I had, gone to university and college for. And I always felt, and it's been stressed to us by our parents, that education is so important. And of course, if you haven't your health, then really haven't much, because you need your health to be able to get out there and to advocate.
It's so important to have individuals like yourself and your family advocating and working towards change, because for so long Indigenous voices have just been swept under the rug, just ignored, even as we're seeing things coming up in the news over the summer with these children that were found. It just seems to be a theme that people don't seem to take Indigenous voices seriously.
We haven't been given the right, for many, many, many years. And, it's so unfortunate that people who live in Canada, that Canadian, their everyday Canadian citizen, has now opened their eyes, as we have, found the remains of our children, that have been buried. And now Canada's awakening, saying, what's happening here? How did I not know this? But, if we open our ears and, sometimes our eyes to our heart, with compassion and with love of one another. We would have heard that before, but when it comes to children, people tend to think in a different perspective, because we are protective of our children. And, the way that we use our children certainly tells us how we are in the whole scheme of life with our children and how a country's run. So, the TRC has been out there. The Honorable Murray Sinclair stated that there were remains of our children that were buried. And many people didn't know about them being buried. But no one listened to them then. And they're just starting to listen. And those were recommendations in the TRC. So we are moving forward. And my heart and spirit goes out to the community members, to the families, as they find the remains of their loved ones. But in saying that, it's up to those communities how they decide what to do with the remains of the children that, they find, and whether they take them home to have a proper burial. It's up to them. They're the ones that are hurting and healing. And yes, we hurt and heal for them, and we're empathetic with the families, but it's up to the communities to decide how they wish to proceed with the remains.
Extreme capitalism, just climate change, all these things. The only way we're going to solve these problems is by working together, hearing each other's voices, becoming a united community, right?
There's a large problem out there, and we all need to be part of the solution. And we need to look at it in a respectful way towards one another. And we can't put the blame on anyone, because blame becomes hatred. Then there's fear, and then it goes into, more worse. And we don't want that negative energy out there. We want to have positive energy. We want to have hope for one another, because, we've looked and seen in history, it repeats itself. And in order for this to happen to any other race of people, we need to tell the truth. We need to be transparent and truly know that there is a problem here, and be open and admit that there was wrongdoings, and we need to proceed in that manner. And we can do it if we all work together. And that's not just governments, organizations, businesses. It's the everyday person. The teachers in school need to, in our home, because where does prejudice start if it not in the home? So we need to be able to educate, our children and many people out there.
Yeah. I grew up in a rather conservative community, and it is just interesting. I will use that word. The propaganda that is spread and kind of shared at a young age for people. And it took me a long time to escape those echo chambers and
Yeah.
actually meet people and be like, huh, maybe that's not how the world works. Maybe the world is different. Maybe it isn't centered around this one aspect, this one sort of culture of people. But it's been great meeting with different Indigenous-led organizations and peoples and just getting a new perspective on the world.
We look at the national inquiry into the murdered missing Indigenous women, girls, and the two-spirited. And I see this as being like two-eyed seeing, in that, there had to be research done. There had to be notes, and, there were, and when I say stories, they're testimonies, their life experience that happened with the families and of their loved ones that have never been found. There's some well over 50 years and more that have never been able to have closure with their loved ones. And I often think, oh my golly, you're wondering in your mind every night you go to bed, I wonder if she's okay. Where is she? I hope that she wasn't, harmed, or if she were, that, she didn't feel much of the pain. These families, these mothers, these fathers, aunts, uncles, aunties, they go through this. And I just think, we need to have some peace, some solace. And the only way we can do that is open those, closed cases and try to find some justice there. People just don't disappear. People aren't murdered. They don't do it. There's someone else that is out there, and we need to have the truth. So, that's a scientific component, but yet the Indigenous women, the community members, they knew that this, woman, girl, or gender diverse, person had been murdered. But why isn't anyone ever accounted for? So we knew that, but yet no one would believe us until a national inquiry had been taken with millions of dollars, thousands of pages and testimonies, experience the hurt, the pain. And that's where we're at now. We're aching, we're broken people because of it. And, the government, the church has to acknowledge and certainly look at these issues because they're so serious.
So many systemic problems that have, just been festering for so long. And with this inquiry, when we're looking at, missing and murdered Indigenous women and diverse gendered peoples, has this inquiry and these conversations, I know the government keeps making promises. Has there been any change in how can we protect these vulnerable people?
Well, I haven't seen many changes. I know that the government has put out millions of dollars towards it, but we're waiting for it to see where it goes, who receives the dollars, and how it's laid out. Now we were supposed to have a national action plan, federal national action plan, in regards to the murdered, missing Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited. There was a document that was released, but it wasn't an action plan. So we at NWAC had did our own action plan. Mm-hmm. And, we had stated what needed to be done. We went through the calls for justice from the National Action Plan. And we put the objective, what we were doing. We cost analysis. So we put a cost to it. We put a timeline when we wanted it completed and, follow up from there. But, we haven't seen any of that yet, with the government in those areas, although we at NWAC, we're doing it, even though we didn't have the dollars. But we can't blame the pandemic for everything. The pandemic certainly has been a crisis with the women, because the violence increased at the very beginning, because people were isolated in their own homes and they couldn't go elsewhere. So they're living in the same home as their perpetrator. And it may not just be the woman, but there's, we know that, the housing are overextended, and there's, extended family members, grandparents are living in the home. with her grandchildren or great grandchildren. So not only are the women abused, but the grandparents are as well. And then you have the children that are listening to the abuse or seeing the abuse that's occurring. And this also, is going to have effect on these children. And again, it's going to be trauma that's going to go into intergenerational trauma. And we're already living with that, from the residential schools, the 60 scoop, and discrimination of all sorts, and systemic, in the healthcare system, the justice, it goes on and on. So, it's really difficult. But we at NWAC, as being one of the largest national organizations in Canada, should be at the table with the government, speaking for the needs, not the wants, but the needs that need to be there for our women and our girls and our gender diverse community, to be able to speak on their behalf and to have input into it.
What are some other programs and initiatives that NWAC is working on? Are there any projects or plans in this year?
Certainly. We've been working on a numerous, of projects and what have you, at NWAC, especially with the pandemic. We have, I'm just going to read something. I'm just going to put the phone down.
Hey, no worries. No worries.
All right. It's just that I just want to get it correctly because there's so many things that are happening, in NWAC. So, one of the most ambitious initiatives that we have at NWAC is and we're incredibly proud, of what this is, and it's our Resiliency Lodge program. And you may have heard of it in the paper, the news, we have spoke about it as well. So, it's been out there. So it's shortly after we launched our first virtual Resiliency Lodge programming. It's to provide support across the country during COVID-19. The overwhelming response from both in-person and virtual programs has resulted in the rapid growth of these programs. We have had well over 10,000, if you can imagine that, 10,000 participants in virtual workshops and in getting ready to open the doors of our second Resiliency Lodge, which is happening in New Brunswick with the Willistock homelands. So, this is really exciting for us at NWAC because this is part of our calls. We need wellness, health, and this is truly a part of our healing. So we also have a number of other ongoing programs and initiatives that are core to NWAC's mandate. We have Beat the Drum. Now, many of these you'll be able to see on our site at NWAC, nwac.ca, to go in and further educate yourself and get a better understanding, because what I'm saying is just a brief overview of what we're discussing. So it's Beat the Drum. It's our entrepreneur outreach and navigation program. It saw the growth in the past year with the addition of the Indigenous Women's Business Directory and increased workshops offering to support Indigenous women and girls and 2LS LGBTQIA+ entrepreneurs. We also launched Restoring the Circle last year as an e-learning program that provides trauma-informed and culturally safe training for series providers working with the 2S LGBTQIA+ Indigenous people with living experience of gender-based violence. And, these are so important. And why I say that is because, we need to work for everyone. And then that's what we're doing. We're doing the best that we can to be open and transparent, for all genders, regardless. So there is so much to be proud of, that these really are just a handful of, of many of the initiatives that NWAC has launched. We're looking forward into, 2022 and beyond. There are two initiatives that we're very excited for that's happening. The first one is upgrading our existing platform, Safe Passage, which is a national database dedicated to missing, murdered Indigenous women and two-spirited, educating tools and data collection. Over the next year, we will work to update this data, including increasing capacity of our existing MMIWG 2S self-reporting tool. The expansion of this data will help increase accurate collection on MMIWG cases and further answers to call for justice. NADCA will also be opening our Social and Cultural Innovation Center this year, which will be the cultural hub for Indigenous women and 2S LGBTQIA plus people that supports economic resiliency and the site of NWAC's national office. I'm very, excited for this to be able to, soon be open. And we're looking forward to what 2022 has in store for us. So those are just a few of the initiatives that we've been working on. But, adding to that, every single action makes a difference. We can talk about words, we can write it down, we can have reports, but many of these are put on a file, or they're put on a shelf to add dust. But we need to put these words into action. So every little bit of action that we take makes a difference. So whether it be long term or short term, in order, to send an ongoing, to be able to end this genocide, of the missing, murdered Indigenous women, we need to have action, we need to have sustainable funding, and we need to work collaboratively, not as just as partners. Government always uses the word partners. We need to reset the partnership. We're partners. Well, you know what? I want an ally. We need allies, people that are true to the word, that are on the same topic that we're on. They're going to be there so that we come to the end. It's almost, if I can put it in this term, you have, the government on one, and this is a partnership. This is how I see it. And they're in their black Escalade beside a river, and they're on a paved road. We're all going down, 5 kilometers. I'm in the water, in the river, in my canoe. Black Escalade here on a paved road. I'm on a canoe in the water. We start at the same time. The Black Escalade reaches there within 7 minutes. I'm portaging. I'm paddling down the canoe. I come to rapids where I have to portage. I get out of my canoe. I go up into the woods, go around those rapids and those white waters to get to the other side. It's in July. The mosquitoes are thick. I'm sweating. I'm hot. I'm getting thirsty. But I don't have water. I need to get to the end. I get back into the water and I start paddling again. I'm hot. The bugs are still with me. And then we come to a waterfall and you can hear it roaring. So I need to get to the bank and I need to portage again. But this portage is a lot more larger. The barriers, the thickets are there. There's thorns. I go out and around, and then I come back down to clear waters, and I come back into the river again, and then I portage. And it has taken me over 5 hours to get to the end where we're to meet. So that partnership is of equal ground. But an ally is when we start, both of us in the river, in our canoes, and we go down that river together. We both are canoeing. We go and we portage. We meet all the barriers. We're thirsty, the bugs, the thickets, and the trees. And then we go back in. That is an ally to me, is going all the way with those barriers and challenges that we both face. Not just one group of people facing all those challenges by themselves. So when I say, I'd like to see an ally out there, that's what I'd like to see, is an ally doing exactly what I do.
Yeah, like when you're using partnership as the wording, it's very business and legal language. It's not on that emotional or personal level that we need to get to work towards reconciliation and true unity in this country.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what it is. And, people, we always have these theme words. We had, TRC, National Inquiry, partnerships, and we really need to look at the language that we use, because each word has such a strong meaning, and it may have a different definition to the person that, is receiving it at the other end. And I truly feel that now we need allies, and we're seeing, in other countries, with what's happening now with Russia, and now we're seeing, the countries coming together and working as allies. And if they can work with other countries as allies, why are we not able to work within our own country with the people that live here, the first peoples of the land?
There's a real othership that has kind of accumulated and cultivated within modern society. You have one group of people here, one group of people here, but we need unity. We're all a unified family. We're all humanity, right?
Exactly. And Canada is a diverse country. We have many, we have different religions, we have different race, people of color, and we need to work together and embrace. When I look back hundreds of years ago in my territory of Mi'kma'ki, we embraced the British, the English. But we never ever anticipated, because we never had the ownership of land. We used, the land for what we needed today, so that there would be more there for tomorrow, for our generations. But the way it is today, we go in and we rape Mother Earth, and we take everything because of this greed. Mm-hmm. And we never had that. We shared. Whatever we had, we would share. And that's why the midwinter feast is so important, to us, because we gathered, our foods in the summer, we would dry them. And then in the mid of winter, when it's getting over in February, we would all come together, because we've been in our own little areas for so long, because of the bad winters that once, occurred. Then we come together, we take our provisions that we had, we sing, we drum, we dance, we feast, we tell stories, and we're there in love and compassion, and that's what we need to continue doing.
Lorraine, it was an absolute pleasure talking with you, having these great conversations. Where can people go to find out more about NWAC and the work you do?
If you go on our site, NWAC, NWAC.ca. You can look in the President's Corner. And when you look at the President's Corner, it'll say what I do every month. I put a monthly edition out, and it'll give you what I do. You'll also see our CEO report, Lynn Grew, and she, along with myself, we work, like two peas in a pod. And, we work, diligently for our women, for our community members. And, you can read her report, and it'll give you another initiative, our workshops that we've done, and, what the women deserve. Their voices need to be told. And although I'm the political voice, we need to hear from the grassroots people, because their voice is so important. And I wouldn't be where I am if it weren't for them.
Enjoying the content from You Multicultural? Subscribe so you can stay up to date with everything that we're doing. I'm Ryan Funk. This was You Talk, and have yourself a good one.